call this meeting of the State Government Committee to order. If the clerk would, please take the roll.
Alexander. Beck.
Here.
Bricken.
Here.
Carr.
Here.
Carringer. Chisholm.
Here.
Cooper. Halford. Helton.
Here.
Holsclaw. Holsey.
Here.
Jernigan. Johnson.
Here.
Littleton. Marsh.
Here.
Moon.
Here.
Powell. Wendell.
Here.
Vice Chairman Eldred.
Here.
Chairman Kiesling. Vice Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. First off, I want to say our thoughts and prayers are with Chairman Kiesling and his family. He had to attend a funeral today, so if you would, just remember them today. And with that, if there's anyone else has any personal orders that they'd like to, Representative Beck.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to recognize Alicia Sequity. Alicia, would you stand up? She's my intern for this year. She's a budding senior at Merle Hyde High School. Thank you.
Representative Wendell.
Members of the committee and guests, please make welcome Joseph. He's an intern from Tennessee Tech. He is currently a junior and he hails from Clarksville, Tennessee, and he is constituent of our chairman. Thank you very much. Look forward to working with you, Joseph.
Is there anyone else? If not, we're ready to go with the agenda. Okay. All right. If not, we'll move right into our agenda. First up, we have House Bill 1035 by Speaker Marsh. We have a motion and a second. And Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 1035 is the State House of Representatives redistricting plan. We do have an amendment that I'd like to move adoption of. It's Amendment Code 10941.
We have a motion and a second on the amendment. Any objection to adding the amendment onto the bill? I believe it makes the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Makes the
Okay,
bill.
it makes the bill. So we're voting on adding amendment 10941 to House Bill 1035. All in favor?
Could we hear what the amendment is?
We will have discussion if we can get it on there, or we've got a motion to, it makes the bill. Okay. Okay, we're voting on adding the amendment to the bill. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. So the amendment is on the bill, and Speaker Marsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As amended, this House redistricting plan is the work product of the Select Committee on Redistricting. The plan complies with all state and federal constitutional and statutory requirements and the House redistricting guidelines. The plan is composed of single-member districts. Each district is contiguous. Each district is constituted using 2020 census data and geography. The plan complies with the Voting Rights Act. The plan complies with the judiciary interpreted state constitutional requirements concerning county splitting. This plan protects the sanctity of counties by creating whole districts in each county with a population sufficient to support a whole district, and by preserving single county districts and multi-district counties in those counties which constitute a single district or divide evenly into multiple districts with judicially recognized deviation limitations. The plan complies with federal constitutional requirements for one person, one vote as applied to state legislative districts. Specifically, this plan has an overall population range of 9.9%. It splits 30 counties. It includes 7 districts with paired incumbents. It includes 8 districts without an incumbent. It maintains the current number of minority districts, 13, and creates 2 coalition districts. Finally, at my discretion and direction, this plan was reviewed by the Attorney General's office. Mr. Chairman, at this time, and with your permission, I would like to ask the Redistricting Committee's attorney, Doug Himes, to go over this concept generally.
Okay, sir. We're going to go out of session, and Doug Himes, you are recognized, and if you would just state your name and position for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Doug Himes. I am your House Ethics Counsel, and I'm also the counsel to the Select Committee on Redistricting. And the plan that you adopted as amendment number 1 is on the video board to my right. And I just would say a few things of background about this plan. I think, as many of you know by now, that the 2020 census provide a very dynamic framework for redistricting the Tennessee House of Representatives. Tennessee's population grew from 6,346,105 to 6,910,840. That's a 8.9% growth rate. The U.S. by comparison grew by 7.4%. Your ideal district size increased from 64,102 to 69,806. And of course, this growth was vastly different throughout the state and uneven. 17 counties grew by more than 10%. Most of these counties are concentrated in the middle Tennessee area. Conversely, 30 counties actually lost population, experienced negative growth. In the decade from 2000 to 2010, that number was only 8 counties. This time it was 30 counties that lost population. Most of those counties are located in rural West Tennessee, the Upper Cumberland region, and in Northeast Tennessee. As a result of all of these demographic shifts, there was essentially a 3-seat shift in representation from east and west toward Middle Tennessee. And those changes are reflected in the plan that's on the board. As Speaker Marsh said, this plan has an overall population range of 9.90%. Highest district, districts 67 and 68, Montgomery County, are a positive deviation of 5.09%. The lowest district deviations, District 78 in Dixon and Cheatham County, is a negative 4.81%. There are 30 split counties in this plan. 9 in West Tennessee, 9 in Middle Tennessee, and 12 in East Tennessee. 7 districts have paired incumbents, 1 in rural Northeast, 1 in Knox County, 2 in Davidson County, 1 in Williamson County, 1 in rural Middle and Western Tennessee on the boundary, and 1 in Shelby County. And there are 8 districts without incumbents, 1 in Knox, 1 in Trousdale and Sumner County, 1 in Rutherford County, 1 in Williamson County, 3 in Davidson County, and 1 in Montgomery County. This concept maintains the current number of majority-minority districts, 13, 1 in Hamilton County, 2 in Davidson County, 1 in rural West, and 9 in Shelby County. And this plan creates 2 coalition districts, both located in Davidson County. And of course, a coalition district is a district that has a combined voting age population of multiple minority or ethnicities above 50% of voting age population. And surprisingly, there were 6 districts that stayed exactly the same in this plan. And those are districts 19, 22, 24, 38, 66, and 94. I would be happy to go over the plan district by district, Mr. Chairman. Otherwise, that completes the part of the presentation I have for you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Himes? Representative Jernigan.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Himes, for your presentation. I've had a chance to look at the map a little more since our last subcommittee meeting. Will you walk me through, I guess, the decision process on how, I guess, you created the districts? Like, for instance, I know the basics of Baker v. Carr and one person, one vote, and the Voting Rights Act and the population variance. And limiting counties can be split and natural geographic boundaries, et cetera. But there are several paths that you can take on in abiding by those requirements. Can you tell me how you did yours?
Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Jernigan. I would say that this is the work product of the committee. So as the committee was composed of 16 members representing both parties. Speaker Johnson, the chair, Speaker Marsh was the vice chair. There were also then 3 area coordinators, Representative Hazelwood for East Tennessee, Representative Hicks for West Tennessee, and Representative Vaughn for Middle Tennessee. Those coordinators and or the chair and vice chair of the committee or a combination thereof and myself met with the various members of this body over the time from when we received the census data in mid-August, until this plan was adopted at the Select Committee's meeting on December 17th. So from mid-August to mid-December, those meetings and discussions occurred. And then it's basically a balancing of everything you mentioned, the constitutional provisions, the statutory provisions, just the census data and the demographic
Right.
shifts itself. And then is balance and creates this while trying to comply with all of those different requirements that you have to comply with.
Representative
So
Jernigan.
you would say that your role was that you would take the recommendation of the committee and make sure that it was constitutional. Would that be accurate?
Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Jernigan, that's accurate. I think my role is to help guide the committee with crafting a constitutional plan for this House of Representatives, is statutorily compliant, constitutional, and compliant with the guidelines in the case of the House plan, the House guidelines that were adopted at the meeting in in September, I think. So all those, I tried to facilitate that and to facilitate those meetings with the members.
Okay. I have 2 more questions.
Okay,
That's
Representative
All right.
Jernigan.
All right. Well, thank you. Then. So we kind of skipped through about going from district to district because that would take a very long time. But I want to talk specifically about Rutherford County and Laverne, where according to the census, the Latino and African American residents are now more than 50% of the population of the city of Laverne, creating a majority minority city, or basically a coalition city. The proposed plan that we're doing splits the city, making both districts overwhelmingly white. And I don't know if I should address this to you, because I can't imagine you as Doug Himes sitting there drawing it up thinking this is a good idea. So I'm just trying to figure out who makes this decision and the justification for it. And I guess, is that going to be the committee? Do I address that to someone that sat on the committee, or do I address that to you about why that city was split up in the manner that it is?
Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Jernigan, is the question there are cities. So our Constitution requires us to not split counties. There is no similar requirement on dividing or not dividing municipalities. And it's not uncommon as practice of the House and past redistrictings to split municipalities. And there are municipalities split. I don't know about Laverne. I guess you're telling me it is split.
Right.
And if it is split, looking at this map, it looks like most of it would be in District 13. And that's not uncommon in the plan to have split municipalities. Nothing requires them to be kept whole.
Okay, but and you wouldn't know about the decision process, would you? That'd be more the committee that made that up. You're just there to say it's constitutional because municipalities can do that.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Jernigan. So I think there's Rutherford County is a good example of a county that benefited in this cycle, gained an entirely new seat, and it grew so much in the last decade that they went up to 5 full districts. Last decade they added a district. This decade they added a district. When you do that, you have to balance, just like statewide and staying within that population range, you have to add that 5th district, and it has to balance within that county so that all the seats, knowing that there's 4 incumbent members already there and you're creating a new one. So normally in the process, you figure out what those in some of these counties, for example, Rutherford, you want to know what the preferences are of those folks that live there and that are representatives there. And you take that into consideration, knowing that everybody's going to have to probably give a little bit like you do statewide, except for those 6 districts that stayed the same. So does that help answer that? It's just the balance of what folks want to some degree.
I think so. I think the preference of the residents of Laverne would probably not to split up their voters, but I'll move to my last question. If that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Cordova in eastern Shelby County, it's traditionally been the same in House District 96. And currently it's affected minority coalition district right now. And in this plan, we're dividing up Cordova, and there's a thin line extending from Cordova almost to the Mississippi River. And I'm just kind of asking what the rationale was for that change.
Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Jernigan. So you're talking about 96, which is the light green district where the hand is right now, this is the proposal. So in Shelby County is another good example of a county that, unlike Rutherford County, between the 2 censuses, and once we got the census data back, was one of the counties that didn't make out so well. Rutherford County benefited, Shelby County did not. Shelby County went from 14 districts at the beginning of this cycle. In this proposal, Shelby County has 13 districts. One of those districts moved to Rutherford County. In fact, you could think about it, either moved, it's the districts that shifted, Rutherford County, the one in Trousdale, and in Sumner County, part of Sumner, and Montgomery County. Shelby County lost a district. Shelby County also has 9 majority minority districts. And this plan, the plan that is been adopted as amendment number 1, maintains those 9 majority minority districts, which is important for compliance with the Voting Rights Act. And what 96 reflects is the loss of a district and the shifting of population, and both 96 and 98 went from more of a north-south district to more of an east-west district. And that's not uncommon, again, in the redistricting cycles, to have areas shift. And you can think about this is in an urban county, but you also have these shifts directionally in the rural areas where folks will pick up different counties that draw them, instead of going north and east, they go east and west, or vice versa.
Right.
So 96 is a product of the population loss to Shelby County in compliance with the Voting Rights Act.
Representative.
Well, you mentioned the other majority minority districts in the city of Memphis where the African-American voting age the population is extremely high, right? It's from what I saw was 60 to 80%, which is much higher than any required VRA compliance. Why wouldn't you just draw a 9th district in that area where you wouldn't have to create something like this? You could have districts that are in compliance without breaking up Cordova, I guess, would be my question.
Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Jernigan. The proposal, including districts 96 and 98 that do split the Cordova area, which is part of the city of Memphis,
Right.
comply with the guidelines, statutory requirements, and Constitution, including the Voting Rights Act as drawn. Could you draw them a different way? I
Right.
think that's possible if you could draw any of these districts a different way. I would suggest that that there are districts in Memphis. There's parts of Memphis that are in southwestern Memphis that are overwhelmingly African American, total population and voting age population. And that's the same in East Tennessee. There's parts of East Tennessee that are overwhelmingly white. In order just to balance and to maintain those 9 districts, this particular district changed its shape from more of a north-south to an east-west. And that's just the pure balancing of the population once we received it. And once losing a district, going from 14 to 13, you have to move things around.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Beck?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Himes, can you give us the cliff notes of what has changed from the original plan that I've seen and this amended plan that we just voted on?
Mr. Himes?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Beck, this is not changed. This is the same plan that went through the Select Committee, the same plan that went through Public Service, and the amendment you adopted today is the exact same plan that you saw a picture of beginning December 17th.
Representative Beck?
Okay, so there's no changes from the original proposal. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank
Second
you.
of,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
second, Mr. Himes, I was informed that when I lost part of my district in Madison and in East Nashville, that it was to balance the minority majority districts, District 54 and Harold Love's district. Due to gentrification, there had been some shifts in demographics, and which I was glad to have the explanation of the change of my district. But then I was surprised when the map came out. District 54, formerly, presently, Chairman Dixie's district, that even though I had lost part of my area for to keep that district minority majority, which I believe is showing at 54%. But there's on the western part of that district, there's a fishtail that draws the chairman, Vincent Dixie, into an 80% white district, being District 50. What would be the logic behind taking minority districts from me, but yet the representative for that district is African American, and so is the swath, or I call it a fishtail. I'm not sure if there's a more defining term for it. When the present state representative was drawn from a minority majority district into an 80% white district.
Mr. Himes?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative Beck. So yes, I put the areas on the screen that I think you're referring to. I think importantly, in complying with the Voting Rights Act, less concerned at times with you all as incumbents, more concerned with making sure the districts comply with the Voting Rights Act. And in complying with the Voting Rights Act, significant challenges to both District 58 and 54, which are traditionally African American majority minority districts in downtown and North Nashville. 58, I think, started after the census data came back at 62% white voting age, compared to starting the decade about 63% African American. So definitely had to juggle those districts to make sure that they were in full compliance with the Voting Rights Act. And I think both of these districts comply fully with the Voting Rights Act. They both maintain minority voting age populations in excess of 50% plus one.
Representative Beck.
And I understand that's the reason that I lost minority representation, was to shore up these two districts who had their demographics had changed through gentrification. And that's fine with me. But my question goes back to, I gave up a large swath of minority representation for my district, for District 54, to keep it a majority minority district, which it should be. That's the way it should be. But then this proposal takes out a swath of African American demographics where it just so happens that our chairman lives in, and gives it to a district that is 80% white. So can you explain to me the logic or the theory behind that when we're trying to preserve a minority majority district in District 54?
Mr. Himes.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Beck, we do preserve the majority minority district in District 54. And I guess I don't know if I'm the best person to answer your question, but I can tell you that not every African American resident in that part of West Nashville is included in District 54. And it's impossible. I mean, one thing you don't want to do is pack every African American resident into one district or two districts. And so while District 50 may have, and I'll look, District 50 may be, District 50 might be, is it 50?
54, I believe.
Well, 50 is the Mitchell district, right? And
Mitchell,
so,
yes. That's
so
correct.
it's 50 is 74.13% white. It's 11.7% African American voting age. It's 4.3% Asian and 6.89% Hispanic voting age. So, it's not, there are African American residents throughout the state, and the Asian citizens, Hispanic citizens are not under this plan packed into a few districts.
Representative Beck.
Can you point out where Representative Vincent Dixie lives on that map for me? The fishtail or finger or whatever you want to call it that jettisons down there. Is there any reason for that to jettison down, say, community boundaries or physical boundaries or anything like that? What is that the case?
Mr. Himes.
Again, Representative Beck, I think I can just tell you that this complies with the requirements, the constitutional and statutory provisions and the guidelines.
Representative Beck.
So can you tell me today, as we're sitting here, the reason to split that fishtail where Chairman Dixie lives?
Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Beck. Representative Beck, I think it's just a decision as part of the process in redistricting, balancing these districts within Davidson County and making sure that this plan is compliant with the guidelines, the statutory and constitutional provisions.
Any other questions, Representative?
Very, very quickly, Mr. Chairman, there were plans that the maximum deviation is splitting 30 counties, which is this plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, Representative Beck, this plan splits 30 counties.
And were there any, there were other plans produced that split less counties, I believe 23 or 24. Is there a reason we didn't strive in this plan to split less counties?
Mr. Himes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Beck. I think, under the Lockert decision, the maximum that court, Tennessee Supreme Court, suggested that we split is 30. And this plan does split 30. And when you go east, we started in some ways going east. There was population issues coming out of the northeast corner. And you start splitting counties that you don't have any choice but to split. Could you split yet fewer? Possibly. And I think that becomes a policy decision about those. But you're always going to split more counties, probably closer to 26, 25, 27, 28. And then you have the discretion to split counties, although we try not to. This one splits 30. I think you referred to a plan that was introduced that split 23. I think that plan was evaluated to the select committee as well, and it appears to violate the Lockert decision interpreting the Constitution because it split Shelby County. If you don't split Shelby County this time could have been 13 or 14 districts. You do one or the other. What you don't do is split it, I would suggest. And if you do split it, you wind up splitting fewer counties in West Tennessee, but you've done it by doing something that the Lockert decision suggests that you shouldn't.
Representative Beck?
And finally, you use the term policy decision on splitting counties. Who makes that policy decision?
Mr. Himes?
Representative Beck, the select committee, the officers that I mentioned, the area leaders worked with the members and worked across the state. A lot of your county splits occur in the rural areas, and just going across the state and building 99 districts in 95 counties, that's when those decisions would be made. Some aren't, like I said, some aren't real decisions. For example, I'll say Hawkins County had to be split. There was no way around it just because of a bubble of population. So there's some you don't have a whole lot of choice of. Other county that is one you don't have any choice of, Sumner County. I mean, it had too much population it had too little for 3 full, and it needed a little bit more. And so it was split and attached to another county. So you get some of those, but then you have a few that you all have some discretion on, just like the Senate has some discretion on splits as well.
Representative Beck?
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else before we go back in session? Any other questions? Representative Chisholm?
Thank you. I got a quick question. I guess I'll play devil's advocate here. Are there enough African Americans in Shelby County to draw an additional majority minority district?
Mr. Himes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Chisholm, I suspect if you wanted to, and of course, the Voting Rights Act, you need to consider race, but you can't let race predominate a plan. I suspect you could draw 13 majority minority districts if that was your goal.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Himes? Seeing none, we'll go back in session. And Speaker Marsh, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I renew my motion to move HB 1035 as amended to calendar and rules.
You've heard the motion. We have a second. And any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting on HB 1035 as amended. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. The ayes have it. We just moved to calendar rules, is that correct? And Speaker Marsh, yours, we'll move on to calendar and rules. Next on the calendar is House Bill 1037 by Speaker Johnson. Have a have a motion? Have a motion and a second, and Speaker Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move House Bill 1037. House Bill 1037 is the state Senate redistricting bill. This plan is the work product of the Senate Ad Hoc Committee on Redistricting. We have a map of the Senate plan, and with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I would like to go out of session and hear from the Redistricting Committee's attorney, Mr. Himes.
Without objection, we'll go back out of session to hear from Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug Himes, counsel to the Select Committee on Redistricting. I've put the Senate plan on the board now. I can tell you a little bit about this plan. It is, again, as Speaker Johnson said, this is the work product of the Senate and the Senate Redistricting Committee. It has an overall deviation of 6.17%. The largest district is in Montgomery County, District 22, with a positive 3.19% deviation. And the smallest districts are Shelby and the district that is part of Shelby, all of Tipton and Lauderdale counties, which have a 2.98% negative deviation. The Senate plan splits 9 counties: Shelby, Davidson, Knox, Bradley, Hamilton, Montgomery, Rutherford, Sevier, and Williamson. And no incumbents are paired in the Senate plan. And this plan maintains the 4 minority majority districts that are currently in the Senate, the current Senate map. 3 majority minority districts in Shelby County and 1 in Davidson County.
Are there any questions for Mr. Himes on House Bill 1037 while we're out of session? Seeing none, we'll go back in session. And Speaker Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I intend to offer an amendment reflecting the Senate redistricting plan presented to us today on the floor. So I would renew my motion to move House Bill 1037 to calendar and rules.
We have a second, and you've heard the motion to move House Bill 1037. Is there any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting on House Bill 1037. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We'll move on to calendar and rules. Next up, we have House Bill 1034 by Speaker Marsh. We have a motion and a second. Speaker Marsh, you're recognized, and I believe you're traveling with a couple of amendments. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, HB 1034 is a congressional redistricting bill. I filed 2 amendments on this bill. I would like to ask that amendment drafting code 11233 be withdrawn.
Without objection, withdrawn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move adoption of amendment drafting code 11504.
We have this one as, it is an untimely filed amendment, but we have a motion to hear the. If there's no objection to taking up the untimely amendment, we'd take a vote on. We don't need a vote. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This is my first untimely amendment, folks. We have the motion and a second. So we're voting on the taking up the untimely amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. So we are on the amendment number 11504. And I believe this one makes the bill as well. Is that correct?
Correct, Mr.
Speaker.
Chairman.
Okay, if there's no objection, I'd like to vote to put the amendment on House Bill 1034. We have the motion and the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment is on the House Bill 1034. And Speaker Marsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This plan complies with all state and federal constitutional and statutory requirements. This plan creates 9 districts, including 1 majority-minority district. Each district is equal in population at 767,871 people, with the exception of the 4th district, which has a population of 767,872, which is 1 more person. 10 counties are split: Shelby, Tipton, Benton, Davidson, Williamson, Wilson, Warren, Scott, Campbell, and Jefferson. No incumbents are paired. And finally, each district is contiguous. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would like, with your permission, to ask our attorney, Doug Himes, to go over the concept.
All right, without objection, we'll go back out of session to hear from Mr. Himes. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug Himes, counsel to the Select Committee. The Congressional plan is over my right shoulder on the board for you. The same demographic shifts that we faced, or you faced, when it came to the House plan, and the same the demographic shifts that the Senate had to also consider are in play with the Congressional plan. District 9 started after we got the census results, was down 77,122 people. District 8 was down 51,524 people. District 8 or 9 typically would only get from District 8, meaning that District 8 was down 128,000. Same issues in West or East Tennessee, not to the extent as West. The 1st district was down 41,049 people. The 3rd district down 29,345 people. The 2nd district grew 5,963, but those 3 districts were down a total of 64,431. So those districts, once populated in East and West, moving to the middle, where that population balanced out was Davidson County. And the 9 districts are there, 3 in East, 2 in West, and then the remaining districts in Middle Tennessee. This plan that you see is reflecting the amendment number 1 that you adopted has changed from the presentation that we had last week in the Select Committee and in Public Service in 4 ways. Speaker Marsh mentioned one of those ways, and I'll draw your attention to that one again and the others. So in the plan that was presented to the Select Committee and Public Service last week, Hancock County was split. Hancock County in this is no longer split. It's entirely in the 1st district. The population to accommodate that is, instead of splitting Hancock, is now a small portion of Jefferson County. In the 4th and 6th district, a small portion of Ray County, I think it was like 432 people, was split to go with the 6. Ray, in this, the plan amendment you adopted is all in the 4th. That small part of population now is in Warren County, that is divided out into the 6 to balance population. And it was this division also that last week the 6th district had 1 extra person. This week the 4th district has the extra person. And then finally in West Tennessee, the 9th and 8th districts, Tipton County, you'll recall last week, was all within the 9th district. And in this plan, Tipton is roughly divided half both geographically and population-wise between the 9th and the 8th on Highway 51, if you're familiar with West Tennessee. And then about 30,000 folks in Shelby County that last week were presented being in the 8th are now in the 9th district. So those are the 4 changes from last week to this week.
Are there questions for Mr. Himes?
I guess I am.
Representative,
Mr. Himes, I'm not even sure, you weren't responsible at all with drawing up congressional districts or making sure they're constitutional. Is that correct?
Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Jernigan, I assisted the committee with making sure that any concept that was presented was both compliant with statutory and constitutional requirements.
Okay. Then I guess I'll ask this question then. I currently live in the 5th, and I'll continue to live in the 5th if this plan goes through. But with the new plan, about 1.5 miles away from me in my district is also the 6th congressional district, which stretches east, nearly to Knoxville. The 5th has been whole for 240 years since Andrew Jackson held the seat. And Nashville-Davidson County is a metropolitan form of government made up of white, black, Latino, Asian, many populations, and we have a shared interest. We use the same transit, schools, universities, police, fire, hospitals, public works, etc. We're a diverse community. And when I see my district broken up and my community broken up, I guess I'm asking what the rationale would be for dividing my constituents, again, who share a common interest with the community. So
We don't need any more outbursts, please.
So my question is, what will be the rationale for making that decision?
Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Jernigan. Davidson County has been divided before. It's not been divided to the extent you see it on this map beside me, but it has been divided in other decades. Portions of southern Davidson County have been detached to other districts. Also, urban counties have been divided multiple ways in the past. Both Shelby County and Knox County have been divided into 3 different districts in past cycles. And, Davidson County's been divided in this cycle, and it's balancing the population between the districts to make sure that each district is 767,871.
Representative Jernigan.
Thank you. So,
Representative Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Himes, Davidson County is, according to my addition, is approximately 41% minority. Is that correct?
Mr. Himes.
So I don't have those figures in front of me, but that seems like it would be close.
Okay, so we'll assume for this question that it's 41%. That 41% minority is going to be diluted under this plan by taking 3 slices of the pie and extending those slices out into rural districts where it's more of a majority white district. Is that correct? Or
Mr. Himes.
So there's no question that the residents of Davidson County, regardless of their race or ethnicity, are going to be divided into 3 districts.
Representative Beck.
So that answers my question that this 41% of minorities will be diluted and divided going 3 ways in a pie. Now, maybe not evenly, but it is definitely going to affect their ability to elect who they think would best represent them. And I can't see any equity in that in any shape, form, or fashion. And I know you can't speak to that, but I also don't see any economic equity. The Davidson County has taken off in the last 20 years. In the last 20 years, it has been whole under one congressional district. And in those 20 years, we now collect a third, 33% or 32% of the state sales tax. And that sales tax is divided out throughout the state. So I'm not sure why if it's like my grandfather used to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why economically or infringing on the rights of this 41% minority, why would we want to do that to this county?
Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Beck. Well, I would say, Representative Beck, that Davidson County, the residents of Davidson County have been split into these 3 districts. Davidson County has been whole the last decade. The decade before it was split. And it's this plan presented to you today is a split Davidson County 3 ways. And I can just tell you, as the nonpartisan attorney staffer for the select committee, that what's presented to you complies with the statutory and constitutional guidelines.
Representative Beck.
Well, it saddens me. This plan saddens me. It saddens me for the rights of people. It saddens me for if somebody's having constituent problems with Social Security or VA administration, we're going to have to, instead of saying you live in Nashville, call the congressman from Davidson County. We're going to have to figure out where you live. And, we may get a really good constituent service. We may not get really good constituent service like we're used to. And so it saddens me for the people of Davidson County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Beck. Is there any other questions? Okay, Representative Halsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the population of Davidson County?
Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Halsey, we're going to one moment. The total population of Davidson County is 715,884.
Okay, thank you. And just to make sure the numbers, a congressional district has to have 776,000 and some change.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Halsey, that's 767,871.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Himes while we're out of session? Seeing none, we are back in session. And Speaker Marsh, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion to move HB 1034 as amended to calendar and rules.
Heard the motion. We have a second. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting on House Bill 1034 as amended. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. The ayes have it. House Bill 1034 as amended moves on to calendar and rules. Next up is House Bill 1036 by Speaker Johnson. Speaker Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's no objection, I would like to take House Bill 1036 off notice.
House Bill 1036, is there any objection? Seeing none, is off notice. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the business of the State Government Committee. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. This committee stands adjourned.
Okay.